The reason for the next person being a mystery speaker, I think, will be obvious after he speaks. I just didn't feel that it was good to have who he is and what he does and what his devices have been doing for 50 years or more publicized all around our mailing list, because we send out a few thousand programs and mailing lists during the summertime, during our mailing time, in 2 or 3 different mailings. So I felt it was not good to have this advertised everywhere, and I think you'll agree with me when you hear Tom McKinney, who is from Napa, Idaho, and is ready now to speak publicly. Again, for the first time, we have a public speaker publicly addressing and telling what his experience has been and what his promises is to people. Welcome Tom McKinney here, come down from Napa, Idaho, just to reveal for the first time publicly to a group this size. Go right ahead, Tom.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Dean. I want to let you know this, I feel, is a singular privilege to be here. And I just heard him say that a number of the speakers were first time here. Well, I got the invitation from Dean by telephone, and I really didn't know what was up against because I didn't know anything about this. But Dean has a way on the phone of inviting you that kind of says, get your butt down here. I was kind of hunting excuses to not do very much of this. I asked him, in fact, I said, why couldn't I come on Saturday, do my thing on Sunday, and go home on Monday? And he said, no, we need you here all week. So here I am, and I'm glad of it. This has been very enlightening, and sometimes we think that what we do doesn't really spread far enough. But when you think about dropping a small rock in a small pond and seeing the ripples flow out there, I think in this case, in these kinds of situations, that it's like dropping a very large boulder in a very large placid lake, because these ripples are going to go a long, long way. And I hope they do, because this is the kind of thing that combats the bad things and reverses them and makes them good. He's given me a microphone, so he thinks you people in the back can't hear me, huh? Can you now? Am I better with this, or am I okay with this tie clasp?
About the same to me.
All same? How about you people back in the back? You're okay? Dave, can you hear me? Am I all right? Louder, she says. Okay, I've got this thing, so I'll try to be louder. Of course, we got a guy coming up here and may turn something up. Now am I louder?
Yeah, turn it on.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to not be heard after coming 1,000 miles to make this racket, you know. And I'm supposed to talk about our instrument here that we use for eliminating infectious diseases. And I will. But after coming here there and hearing all the things going on, there's so many things I'd like to mention too. I'd like to see a Congressional Medal of Honor put on Captain Joyce Riley. So what she's doing and she and her husband are doing is fantastic, and we hope to be involved in the future of that. This instrument, I will describe a little as we go along of several things, but it was originated in 1942 by a man by the name of Elton Pigg. He was really a civil engineer without a degree, but he was a road builder, just this kind of thing, a pretty ordinary kind of a guy in a way, but brilliant. He had rheumatoid arthritis. So he had a doctor, a friend of his, naturopath, go with him, and they went to Electronic College that no longer exists in San Francisco. And they stayed there several months experimenting and working on the original, not this one, but the original machine, which was much like the Rife machine that most of you know about. That was the start of it, but that didn't suit Elton, and so what Elton wanted was to build a mechanical immune system that you could hook onto your body that would amplify your immune system to where it could conquer the problems. That way, it would fit everyone, not just part of the people. So this is part of the story. My getting involved with Elton dates back to, I have to tell my own story there, that in the latter part of 1989, I don't remember November or December, I had to go to the doctor. And I had very little reason to go to doctors since World War II, where I'd spent a bunch of time with them in the hospitals. But at that time, I'd had a few broken bones in the meantime, but most doctors can fix that pretty good. That's mostly what they can do. But at this time when I went to the doctors and they started checking me out, they found that I had colon cancer, prostate cancer, cancer of the pelvis bone, and one other. And what the heck? I lost it. And testes. I also lost those too. Anyway, the whole thing, I could see the dollar signs going around and around in the eyes of these people checking me. Because here's an old character, pretty much expendable. I was just a stockbroker, not doing too much. So the schedule, you might say, of operations was being set up. The first one, which was the right thing to do, is they cut the tumor out of my colon. That worked out okay. They done some things that caused me to have a bad time, so I had to spend an extra week or 10 days in the hospital. And during that time, the friends of mine who'd had experience with cancer and knew a naturopath with a 95% success rate, they told me about this lady. And am my mic gone dead again? No? I'm okay? So I decided, after my own doctors, I could just see that I was being set up to take a year or two to kill me and make a ton of money for these guys, and I wasn't going to live to enjoy any of it. So with that in mind, I went to the naturopath, took 14 months, quite a lot of money, an awful lot of herbs, 120-some a day, plus several minerals, and 14 months altogether. And we eliminated those cancers I had at that time. Well, in getting this, when this happened, I was all warped out of shape because I said, how come when there are cancer cures, and I use that, not supposed to say that word, but anyway, you know, the results are 100%, so it's hard not to use that. But in her case, with a 95% success rate, and I found out that others had been doing the same thing, and that cancer treatments successfully had been going on since the 20s. And AIDS, by the way, the same doctor is the one that cured Magic Johnson. So finding this out made me, you know, I just thought I ought to do something about it. So I talked to the local Congress and found that didn't do any good. I didn't know what I was doing anyway. And I talked to a bunch of doctors, and they turned their back on me. It didn't do any good. I talked to the lobbyists in Washington, D.C., and that didn't do any good. I got in 2 national newsletters, and in those newsletters, it did go far and wide, and a lot of people called me. So in that, for the next, better than a year, I referred a lot of people to that naturopath. And I feel very good about that because almost all of them survived very well. Well, through that time in my own research, I ran on, somebody told me about this old gent named Pig who had a machine. So I became acquainted with him, and actually in 1992, finally then started working with him in 1993, and found that his success rate was phenomenal. He had no failures from 1942, clear, but he worked by himself, only on the number of people that he could handle by himself, in testing them, finding their ailments, and doing setting numbers on the machine to repair their problems. So it wasn't any big thing with him. He didn't charge much. He charged enough to pay the factory for manufacturing the machines, and sustain himself in a very frugal manner. So what happened with us working with him, my wife and I, over these from 93 on, he got kind of excited because we brought more people to him and done this sort of thing, and we had no intention of ever being in this business. Never thought about it. I was supposed to be a retired stockbroker. I thought I'd quit. Well, a little over 2 years ago, Elton Pig died of an aneurysm. He was 88 years old, and my wife had been doing his tests for him for the last few months because he was too ill to do them. And when he passed away, we were the last people on earth that could run the instruments and solve people's problems. So we started doing like he had, with what we could handle. Nothing very drastic, but just kind of plugging along. And our success was also 100%. I should qualify that. The cancer patients that we got, most of them come to us after they'd used the doctors until the doctors said go home and die. So there aren't very many that we get even yet that haven't been through the mill with the medics. But we were successful in that, but they are, I can say 100% successful, except that a few of them, I thought it was about 2 out of 100, but Gene just reminded me before we got here that since the first year we've done 995 people, and we lost 7 or 8 people. So I guess it isn't 2 out of 100. It might be a little more than 1. But these people came to us when they were so far gone that we couldn't bring them back. And we'd tell them that the odds were we couldn't do it. Now, cancer is easy, and the real doctors will tell you so. It's not a tough disease. It's always been curable. But it's one of the biggest money makers in America. So from an economic standpoint, the powers that be do not want cures. That's going to foul them up terribly. So what these people that we couldn't save, you see, that what I call doctoritis, they'd been filled with so much chemo, radiation, hormones, and all this stuff to where their internal organs would shut down. But they couldn't, their digestive system wouldn't work. And if we can't get them to eat, and we can't get any fire in the boiler, that's the only time we'll lose them. We saved most of those. They'd tell us, we're the last resort, will you at least try? So try we would, and like I say, most of them we did save. But there were those losses, a few. Other than that, the success rate has been 100%. Always been 100% on the cancer in even those cases. We eliminated the cancer before they died, but we couldn't bring their internal organs back into functioning like it's supposed to be. There may be an answer to that one day, but right now we still do not have that. Now, this instrument has done some fantastic things in the area of infectious diseases, cancer, AIDS, staph infections, and all these things. And as I heard what I'd like to call General Joyce today, I think that we may be able to contribute quite a lot to what she's doing. The symptoms she talked about with the Gulf War vets, many of them were like histolytic amoeba and Epstein-Barr and these things. We can fix those. We've done a bunch of those. So if that's the case, and we don't know that it is, but we're going to find out, because we'll be running tests to see if we can't contribute something to change this picture for the vets. And these are things that we do that the medics can't do. So maybe we can do a lot more than we are now, and we intend to make a big effort on that thing. But this instrument, not very big, it's about 2 inches thick, 8 inches wide, a little over a foot long, weighs 3 pounds. There's 18 dials on it with 10 notches on each, and the number of combinations in that kind of thing is astronomical. Gene could tell you how many, but they're kind of the gajillions, you know. Well, this would give you an idea that when we find in the things we don't know now, through the hopefully expert physicists and so forth that we intend to have, to get the right combinations of numbers, then we will be able to do all kinds of other things, such as Parkinson's and MS, Alzheimer's, all kinds of things that we will be targeting. Now, one of our main things are tumors. We can take the cancer out of a tumor, but we can't get the tumor. But most of the time, the tumor will dissipate of its own accord when the cancer leaves, but sometimes not. But through this instrument, and it's an oddball thing to do, it's kind of to explain, because it isn't like any other instrument in the world. There's about 1,900 of them around the world, you know, like the Rife, like the Mora machine in Germany, and Hulda Clark's machine. There's many, many of these, and they all will do a job. And that is if you have a person who can diagnose themselves accurately and can get the right frequency, they can help themselves. If they can't do that, it won't work. In this case, a person can diagnose themselves if they want to go to the expense and time it takes to learn the testing equipment. But that takes some doing. So most people don't want to do that. So we do it by fax and by phone all over the country. We have these machines now in Scotland, in Ireland, the Netherlands, in New Zealand, Costa Rica, all over Canada. They're all over. Some people have been worried that the powers that be may shoot me, and I say they won't, because I'm first place, I'm 81 years old. That wouldn't be a great loss, but it would make a martyr out of me and a fool out of them, so they're not going to do that, even though other cases where they could cut the snake's head off before he got a good start, they were able to stop it. But we've gone too far now. We've got enough things going around the world that they're not going to be able to stop us. So we will continue just like we are and keep getting more and more you might say ability or techniques going that will cure more diseases. We have a book back there with hundreds of infectious diseases that we can handle now. But there's hundreds more that are not infections. And the inventor of this said that if you have the right combination of numbers, we're not touching 1% of what can be done with this thing. Now I'll go a little further in here to kind of give you an idea of what it is and why this statement is so appropriate under the circumstances. See, the thing isn't an electronic zapper. Now we have a number of people have already tried to duplicate it up and down in both coasts, and the electronic firms have found they couldn't do it. In fact, an interesting story told recently by a naturopath who came and went to one of our classes and learned to do this, and is now a satellite and working, treating people himself. But he took one to what he called a world-class physicist. And he asked him, he said, "Can you duplicate this machine?" So he said he went back a few days later, and his machine was torn all apart and all over the guy's lab, and he thought he'd wrecked it, and I'll never get my machine back. But he said a few days later, it was put back together. And in that case, the man said, "Yes, I can duplicate every part of it, but that one little thing in this machine." And he said, when I got to that and took a good look, I saw the imprint of God's hand on it and said, "No way, I can't duplicate that." Well, now what that is, and this man we're talking about, Elton Pig, is the only man on earth that's done it so far. It will be done more. We will probably do more. It was done once, so it'll be done again someday. But it is a little power plant that attracts its energy from the ozone, the ether. Elton's Pig's words were, "I don't give a damn if it comes from the dirt, so long as I get that energy from outer space, not from the plug in the wall." That's electric. See, the energy in our bodies is a type of electricity, but it isn't really electricity. We can hang on to a light bulb all day and it won't turn on. Well, the same thing has happened with some of the scientists trying to harness the energy of the atmosphere. They thought they could light cities with it. It's the wrong kind of energy. It won't do that. That energy that the earth creates in its spin is the same kind of energy that's in our bodies. Every proton in our body is spinning, creating energy. So we are constantly creating energy within ourselves like the world is creating and spinning on its axis. So Elton's intent was, which he did accomplish, was to create a machine where with 3 milliwatts of juice going in the end, and by the way, it'll work for an hour or so all by itself. Don't need to be plugged in. But it'll run out of juice if you don't help it a little. But the 3 milliwatts goes through there, and what he called manipulation through the 18 dials, by the time it gets to the outside and going into the person with the wires with the little steel plates on them that you put on the body under an ace bandage or a belt or whatever is available, that energy is a slight sound wave, and it is the carrier of the energy that comes out of that wand, that thing with the imprint of God's hand on it. So it's taking into that person the same type energy they already have. That's why there's no difference to this thing with all the people anywhere. They're all the same because it's using their energy. It amplifies that to where if there's something negative, it will make it positive. If it's an infectious cell, it kills it. One doctor described it, says, you know, when Ella Fitzgerald hits the high note and a crystal glass breaks, that's what happens. When this little sound wave that you can't feel gets in there with the energy out of that wand in it, it kills the infectious cell no matter what it is. So this is the system. It's kind of mind-boggling in a way. Maybe it sounds kind of insignificant, but it surely isn't, because there isn't anything like it. And a test was made on us a short time ago by some doctors in Costa Rica. And we had eliminated the cancer in some people in Baltimore, Maryland, who were from India. And they had a friend, a doctor friend, and Dr. Raghu Shari, internationally famous, written all kind of books, every degree you can think of, a scholar and a gentleman. Anyway, he called. He said, I've got to know how that thing does that. And I said, Doc, I don't give a damn how it does it. It does it. And I don't know why the purple's on my television screen either, but the thing is working. So I don't care. And I let him know that we were talking about coming to Costa Rica. It's a safe haven for medicine to put in a clinic there, and we will eventually get that done. But I said, if we do that, and we get the clinics going, and we get a research lab going, we will have people in there, and I know enough about what it takes to get these new ideas working. I said, we'll put testers in there, researchers, and say, okay, now we're going to start on MS. Gentlemen, in 3 weeks or a month, have us the answer. If we don't, let's get new testers. Because that idea of studying the breeding habits of a newt in a toilet bowl for the next 100 years to get a big bunch of money out of the federal government when you have no intention of succeeding is a bunch of bull, as far as I'm concerned. So they can take that job and do that job, or we'll get somebody who can, because it's been done before, so it can be done again. So we'll do things that way. Well, Dr. Shari, our first conversation, I don't think he was that enthused, because he was thinking, I'm sure, in terms of a bunch of research. It's already been researched. It's been around since 1942. We don't need to fix it. It's working fine. But finally, after several more conversations, I agreed to go down there, and I took a doctor with me because I don't know all the medical lingo. So we stayed there a week, and he was set for us. He had a doctor from Germany with an instrument. He had a doctor from South Korea with an instrument, and they weren't being tough. They weren't trying to put me down or anything. They were open-minded. They were just plain, real fine people. They are open-minded enough to say, let's take a look. Let's see if there isn't something that's better than we have now. Because the allopathic stuff we've had for a long, long time, well, it's there because it's a money-making son of a gun, not because it helps anybody. But they were this way. The attitude was fine. The days we spent together were great. And when we got done, they said, they finally come to the conclusion, because everything they could do on their equipment, which was $20,000 a whack, I could do better on this. More of and better and more accurately. So they finally said, okay, it's above and beyond anything in the world today. So now then the next thing he's going to do, And he was heading for India the day after we left down there. He'll be back today. And we'll be home tomorrow. We'll be back on the phone then after that. Ranging, he said, I know it works. I know it cures people. It's good friends of mine. But I got to do it myself. Because what I asked for was a school attached to a university that could issue degrees and certificates in vibrational health. There's none in the world. And the TV people caught me at the request of a hospital not too awful long ago and put the dang thing nationwide, trying to discredit us. And that lady said, well, you're not even licensed. I said, of course not. There isn't anyone in America qualified to license me, and there isn't. Because there are no schools. There's textbooks, not on the machine, but on the philosophy of the machine is what they call the Einstein philosophy, where the one we use now is the Newtonian philosophy. But this was part of the reason for going down there, is to get that school going. Well, so he said, I will set that school up at the university where we can issue the degrees, but I've got to see this work personally. So they intend, we'll start making the arrangements this week after I get home, to bring a terminal AIDS patient from Costa Rica, and he has one picked out, I guess. And then there was a Canadian in the group he wasn't a doctor, I really don't know where he fit. But anyway, he's to bring 2 terminal cancer patients from Canada. And they'll bring them into Nampa, and they'll all stay there. And he said, I've got to watch that happen. So they'll be there a week, because we normally put cancer in total remission in 4 to 6 days. Now, that doesn't cure it. It takes 2 to 3 more months to cure it. But, and again, I'm not supposed to say that. Gene will kick my butt when I get off here. But the thing about it takes a while. You don't get all of it the first time. You get most of it. Then the rest is in remission where you can't get at it. So we have to test periodically, and when it flares up, we knock that out. 1 to 3 times, that's all gone. Then it's all gone. There isn't any more. And that's been my personal experience, having been through 6 of these cancers. The last one, they gave me less than a week to live. Well, so this is the kind of thing. Now, this is what they're going to watch. But they at least made it well known to us. We could say, oh, well, how do we know? There may be stuff all over the world. So we're talking to people, in this case, that have been all over the world. Doctoring everything you can think of. So with the top authorities in the land, we've established it is one of a kind. The only one that can do this. Now, he wants to watch us take these terminal cases, but we've done it before, we don't mind it a bit, off the deathbed and put them back on their feet in 4 to 6 days. Now, that will happen hopefully the latter part of this month. As soon as we can get everything put together. That being done, then we'll go for the school in Costa Rica, attached to their university, to issue what this lady said I don't have, a license to practice vibrational health. That's really the other thing here. But this thing is so far-reaching. See, the people who can, they'll, for instance, buy 2 machines. On a tough case, most of the time it takes 2. A lot of cases they'll take a longer time because they can't afford to and just go with it. And a lot of cases they don't have any money at all, and we won't let anybody die. We're going to get them a machine anyway. But this being done, and they're okay, we get them out of it. Now then, they keep that thing for the rest of their life, because it'll last for life. You take care of it. It's just kind of delicate, so you can't toss it around. But they can set the thing in the kitchen then, plug it in, and not use the ground wire, just use the treatment wires, and they'll hook them to a cookie sheet or a stainless steel mixing bowl, something like that. Then when they go to the store and they buy supplements, they buy stuff from the drugstore, I don't care what it is, and I don't care how much noise is made about that product. If it's made by man, over half of it is contaminated with something. We tested 4 bottles of soy sauce and found 3 of them with cancer. Now, oatmeal is one of the best foods you can eat, but one of the most contaminated because it's a natural habitat for bugs. You can set the box of oatmeal on that cookie sheet. The next day it's pure. If you put it in your refrigerator, the bugs won't come back. It's too cold. But things like it, you use it forever. Now then you got a cold, you got a flu. It takes normally 3 days for pneumonia to eliminate that. infections of all kinds. So it's a thing that that family, that person can use for life. And what we find most of the time is they call up when they only have one machine and buy another because they said their neighbor borrowed this one. Their friends have it because they have, well, they've just eliminated the diseases in a lot of people. So there is almost no end to what the thing can do in the world of infections and illnesses. And by treating those pills and that kind of situation, you will eliminate an awful lot of trips to the doctor, because most of the belly aches that people have are because of the pills they're taking. I heard colostrum mentioned, a very good supplemental food, one of the best sales pitches there is. But we found quite a bit of colostrum that has botulism in it. Now, if you treat it overnight, you don't have it. Then it's good food. And all of it don't have botulism. Part of it does. These things go on all the time. We had a little boy, 7 months old, brought to us by his mother and his aunt, who the aunt had had lymph gland cancer. We had fixed it, and this little boy, 7 months old, had never slept all night. He vomited all the time. He was sick constantly. He went to his doctor, said he had something wrong in his throat, that after he passed the age of 1, they would operate on this and fix it. Which is a bunch of bull. They didn't need that, no way. But in bringing him there, we tested him, found him to be full of salmonella. That was his problem. We tested the food, full of salmonella. Well, we can't call up a factory that's making baby food and say, hey, you guys got bugs in your grub, because they were not going to pay any attention to us, because we don't have any big credentials, don't have a license to practice. But so we couldn't say anything about that. But I sat on the Davenport upstairs, and we had our lab in the basement, and my wife was down there with the mother and the aunt and checked the food, and it took an hour and 5 minutes to eliminate the salmonella out of the baby. He's not had a sick day since. He's 2 years old now, and we get a picture about every 3 months of him. But he don't need any operation. He just needed some good food. So they went back to their doctor, and the doctor said, that's not true. Little kids can't have salmonella. Well, the heck they can't. A lot of doctors make no bones about it. Kids can have it, same as anybody else. But this kind of experience, makes you can tell what can be done in a family where they can take care of themselves in many, many ways. Now, to do that, they can't run the test themselves, so they will fax that test in if they're a long ways away. And the way they do that, they call in to our office, and we then fax them a form that they fill out. One of them is a disclaimer to tell them that we're not doctors and we're not claiming to be and all that, and we're not dishing out any medicine either. In fact, we're not doing anything done in any hospital or in any doctor's office in America. So really, by law, we're not breaking any. We're just irritating the heck out of some hospitals. But in doing this kind of thing with this baby, another example there, my wife had a case a short time ago of a little boy with cancer. He was I believe in Florida. So she put him on 2 hours, he was 20 months old, on the machine on a number, and had him send in a test. She tested him every 2 hours and said, take him off, leave him off for 2 hours, put a new number on the next 2. It took 4 times at 2 hours each time, and the cancer was gone. But this kind of experience makes believers out of you for all ages. It makes, and for all kinds of infection. Now, to get that test that I started to, and then got sidetracked on, when you receive this after anyone sends in to us by telephone a request for the form, they will receive the form and the disclaimer, and the form will be where on the 2 bottom corners, one corner you'll put a drop of blood on, about the size of a penny. The other corner, stick it in your mouth, not spit on it, and soak it up a little bit. Let it dry enough to send it through how the fax machine does. Now, that sounds kind of weird, and how in the heck do you fax this sort of thing? Well, when you think about it, it isn't too weird. You talk on the phone, and the vibration of your voice goes across the line. You send a fax message, and that vibration prints her out on the other end. So in your body is this energy we're talking about. So when you send something of your body, like the blood and the saliva, we want them both because we want to compare them both, because sometimes not one of them is not a good test. But when you fax that to us, you have faxed us the energy of your body. That comes across just loud and clear, just as if you were standing right there. Gene has a sample of this that was a bad one. We had to get another one. But it was good in that it showed us almost like an explosion of the 2-inch square plate that it was put on, where it splayed black, like black ink. Well, it showed the center of that and an area around it, sort of like a aurora or something. It was, like I say, not a good, but it showed definitely here is that energy that comes across there and can, be used for the purposes that we use it for, either blood or saliva. We could probably do it with urine. You could do it with a lot of things, but this is what we happen to use. But it makes it possible for somebody in Florida or in Scotland to fax us a test, and we fax back to them the numbers that they need to put on this machine to treat that, and we'll tell them it depends on the circumstances. On that worksheet they get back, it will show every infection in the body, and very rarely is there only one. We don't test for just one, we test for everything. Well, when they get that back, they will have all the infections and the intensity from 0 to 1,000. That will show then, on that worksheet, it'll say retest in 24 hours or retest in 48. So if it's a real bad case, we're going to want to answer back in 24 hours. So we will, but we don't get off the machine. Just send us another test, like they did to begin. We test that. The worksheet then shows they stopped. Maybe they were at 1,000 on cancer or staph, and the next one it's on at like 822 or whatever the case may be on each of them. So we see the progress of where it starts to where it ends all the time that we're treating them. We're not treating them, they're actually treating themselves. We just tell them how to put the numbers on the machine and hook the machine to themselves. They're on 96-inch wires. You sleep like a million on it because it makes you relax real well. And I know better than anybody because I've spent a lot of time on there. But this thing is an instrument that's just, in a way, mind-boggling in all the things it can do. And we hope to have a big benefit, and hopefully in the very near future, on Joyce's problem with the Gulf War people and with many other situations that will come out from a lot of the people here. And we were on the air on their hour of power, and before I was hardly off that little show, the people in our office said we're already swamped. So there will be, and we don't have enough people. We're going to go as fast as we can, and we hopefully will get to a spot of having 24 hours a day of qualified testers that can receive these tests and answer back. So this is what it's all about here, and she's holding up a sign over. You say 1 minute, or she's giving me 15. I can talk for a long time yet. So I don't know whether I should ask for questions and get involved in something I can't handle, or what do you think? Who has a specific question they'd like?
Over to the microphone. Questions, microphone only.
Okay.
All right. Is this a radionics device?
No.
You don't have a well or a...
Who are you? We asked for name.
Alice Rose.
No,
Okay.
it's not classed as radionics. Like I say, it's one of a kind. There's been no classification for it. There wasn't even a name until recently. We named it Holistic Arvida. Okay, that holistic means is mind, body, and spirit. Arvida, science of life. That's what we call a machine. It was never named. There's been nothing printed about it yet. There will be, but there has not been yet. No pamphlets or anything. Nobody has tried to sell it. We've had all kind of companies wanting to buy it, but they want exclusives, and we're not going to give it, because if we did, they would create a situation where it would not go around the world and help enough people. And if we maintain control we will go all over the world, and we're getting a pretty fair start.
And do you have any trouble with die-off when you've killed the cancer? What about the debris?
We cannot take a tumor out. Some tumors dissipate by themselves, and there's some toxins and that thing. We cannot affect that, not so far. But we can just eliminate the cancer. But this works very well in many cases, but the cancer would be operable if it were in remission, so they wouldn't cause it to spread. And we do that quite a lot of the time, where we will have a case where we will say, okay, get on that, and then when it hits 0, we'll have them go to their doctors and go ahead and get the operation. By the way, we want everyone to go to their doctor right after it hits remission, go through every test they can, because it's so much fun. Find out what those doctors say. They call it a miracle. They call it all kinds of things, and one of their prime things to say is, well, we misdiagnosed. You've just never had cancer in your life. So this is the commonest of these things. But we've had some of this, had one just recently where it's going to be operated on. This was on a Thursday, going to be operated on next Wednesday for breast cancer with a tumor. So we said, okay, let's use the machine, and she was not very far along, so it was an easy one. And we don't get many of those, but in her case, by Tuesday, she had no cancer. It was total remission. She went to her doctor. They did do the operation, took the tumor out, but there was no cancer in it. The doctor was amazed because there wasn't any cancer, and that's okay. We like nothing better than to amaze those guys. Does that answer your question?
She's gone. I guess so, she left. Philip
She-
Porter, wondering about the diagnosis process. Right now, you're the only facility that does diagnosis, and I'm
No,
curious.
no, we have some satellites around the country that are people who have come to us that have been trained by us. We have one in Georgia, one in North Carolina. We have one in the Isle of St. Kitts. Who else we have, Gene? That's it, isn't it, right now? One in California. So we're establishing more and more of these until eventually we'll have them all over the country. And we're going to start one. We right here, a local doctor wants to set up become a satellite and treat right here just out of Denver. So there are more all the time that will be set up like that. So it isn't as if we disappeared and they would not be able to be taken care of. It's not that kind of a thing. We're setting it up so it can be ongoing.
Diane Howery, when you get the fax machine with either the blood or the whatever, what do you do to it to find out what energies are needed?
That's a good question. I should have really answered it a while ago. There's two 2-inch square stainless steel plates. And you take 2 of those and put the corner of that piece of paper between those plates. By the way, those plates are always washed with a magnet. That's what clears them of anything of the person before them having anything on there. That goes in there, then that diagnostic machine has no electricity. It's not plugged into the wall. The only energy used in that machine is from the thumb and second finger of the predominant hand of the tester and the energy in that test. It goes through the machine over a magnet, and over that magnet a dial works, kind of a Ouija board thing, but when there's a glitch, which would be in that little energy flow between the test itself and the second finger and thumb of the tester, when that glitch hits that magnet, the pendulum will stop and cross that out. That number is put down, and you do that until you go all the way around the dial, get all the infections, they're named, then you go back and use it again to get the intensity of each. So it's done on a machine, not plugged in, just the energy of the patient or client, whatever you want to call them, and the tester.
Yes, Steve Rose. Do you have any idea on the cost? Will it be significantly less than going to the doctor and being treated for cancer?
The cost of a machine is $2,500. But that's the end of it. Now, as far as that's concerned. Now, the first test you run is $100. It has to be a donation because we are a corporate soul. We're set up the same as the Vatican or the Mormon Church or anything else. We are a religious charitable, and nonprofit organization. So we do things in that manner so that anything we receive is classed as a donation. And so $100 is what's asked for the first test. Well, now if you buy a machine, that's eliminated. Again, if you're treating on one of these machines and you bought it from us, then there is no charge until you hit zeros. When you're all done, then you're testing periodically. Then a retest is $50. So it's not expensive at all. Now I've got 5 minutes left. Okay, you'll find probably the easiest is to stop by our table and pick up the cards so that you can get the phone numbers, fax numbers, and so forth. What table number do we have? We don't have one. We just have a table. Sometimes it moves. The phone number's on it, the fax number's on it. There's also the email and the whole thing. The phone number, if you want me to quote it, 208-466-5324. You done? She says I have 5 more minutes.
You want to introduce your associate so they know who to look for at the table?
He's not hard to introduce. He's about the size of a barn, and he's sitting over here in a black suit, and women think he's pretty good looking. He never does appeal to me worth a hoop, but then they think he's pretty good looking. But G00230 is his name. He's one of the main ones in our organization.
Have him stand up so they can see who he is. There he is, right there.
So we kid around quite a lot. I have to be careful though, you know, because I'm too little to get too smart. So, is there another question? I guess not. Are you done with me? Have I used up my 5 minutes yet? I have about got it done. Well, I want to thank Dean again for inviting me, because it's a lot different than I anticipated. I appreciate very much being able to expose this gadget and what we do, and to have learned about the many other things that we may be able to help with, especially this Gulf War thing. That of course, it makes you mad when you hear about these things. You don't know about them. But, you know, there's the only way those things can change is with organizations like this, spreading their influence over a lot of area and making those ripples in that lake go a long ways. So let's hope we can do a lot of that. And we hope with this gadget, like the only one of its kind, okay, and with our ability, and there's probably many-fold more than we're doing now, as that develops, we may be able to be a big contribution to those war vets. Okay?
All right. Nobody ever goes to jail for quitting a speech too early. Tom, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. You covered everything, I think, very well. Now, Tom said he didn't need to or want to give a workshop tonight, but he'll be there at the table with his associate, Gary, so be sure and check with them and talk with them some more if you wish to. Now, we have 2 things I want to mention. We have one of our staff is, well, let's say this. First of all, Dr. Gary Gordon gets $250 an hour for a consultation. We have one of our staff tonight ready and willing to take him back to the airport tonight. He leaves at 8:55 from DIA. However, if there's any volunteer here who wants to take him to the airport, that takes about 30 minutes, so that's worth about $125 if you want to really ask him enough questions. So and pick his brain. If there's anybody who wants to take him, let me know. No problem, though. We have somebody who also will do so. Now, the Monday morning workshop, you know the speakers tonight who will be offering workshops. But tomorrow, I find that in the one with Joe Blankenship, Brian Desborough, and Arizona Wilder, I didn't know this either, that Arizona has an enormous amount of experience with ETs